Be me, Charlotte, 28. Work as a marketing coordinator at some tech startup. Consider myself pretty enlightened about social justice issues, especially when it comes to gender inequality. Constantly having to educate people about how women face systemic disadvantages in literally every aspect of society. Dating, career advancement, social interactions, you name it. Coworkers are always rolling their eyes when I bring up these topics, but someone has to speak truth to power. Anyway, last month I'm at happy hour with some colleagues from work. This guy Marcus from engineering starts complaining about how hard dating is for regular guys like him. Claims women have all the power on dating apps and can be super picky. Literally laughing out loud at this ridiculous assertion. Marcus, are you seriously trying to tell me that women have advantages in dating? Women face constant objectification, harassment, and are judged solely on appearance. He's getting defensive now, typical male fragility. I'm just saying, I send out dozens of messages and barely get any responses. My female friends show me their phones and they have hundreds of matches. Roll my eyes so hard they almost fall out of my head. Those matches are from men who just want to use them for sex. Women have to filter through endless creeps and threats. The quality of attention matters, not quantity. Marcus and a couple other guys are nodding along with his nonsense. Even some of the women at the table seem to think he might have a point. Absolutely infuriating how internalized misogyny works. Spend the next 20 minutes explaining the concept of sexual objectification and how apparent advantages in dating are actually manifestations of patriarchal power structures. Can tell they're not really listening, just waiting for me to finish talking. Whatever, I'm used to being the only one willing to speak uncomfortable truths. But Marcus's claims are still bothering me days later. Keep thinking about how confident he seemed in his wrongness. Decide I need to gather some actual data to shut down this kind of thinking once and for all. Going to design a proper experiment to demonstrate how much harder women actually have it in the dating world. Spend a weekend researching methodology and planning everything out. Create multiple fake Tinder profiles using photos I find on various social media accounts. Make sure to get permission from people by creating fictional backstories, whatever. The ends justify the means here. First profile, Jake. 29-year-old accountant, decent looking but nothing special, has his life together. Use photos of my friend Emma's brother, who's perfectly average height, normal face, works at some financial firm. Second profile, Michael. 31-year-old teacher, again completely ordinary appearance, stable career. Find these photos through friends of friends. Guy looks like he shops at Target and drives a Honda Civic. Third profile, David. 27-year-old software developer. Another aggressively mediocre-looking guy with a decent job. These are exactly the type of men Marcus was talking about. Middle class, employed, not ugly, but not particularly attractive either. Then for contrast, I create Amanda. And here's where my experiment gets really interesting. Decide to use photos of this woman I found through a local Facebook group who's literally experiencing homelessness. She posted asking for help finding resources, mentioned she's been living on the streets for 3 months. No permanent address, no income, sleeping in her car when she can't find shelter space. Obviously, I'm not actually going to catfish anyone, just gathering data on match rates and initial interest. Figure this will perfectly demonstrate how even women in extremely disadvantaged positions still have to deal with objectification, while privileged men with stable jobs face real hardship that feminists apparently just ignore. Set up all the profiles with basic bios mentioning their situations honestly. Jake's bio, accountant, love hiking and craft beer, looking for something real. Michael's bio, teacher, enjoy reading and cooking, hoping to find my person. David's bio, software dev, into board games and sci-fi, seeking genuine connection. Amanda's bio, going through a tough time right now, living situation is complicated, but staying positive and looking to meet new people. Plan to run this experiment for exactly 2 weeks to get a solid sample size. Create a detailed spreadsheet to track all the metrics. Number of matches per day, number of messages received, response rates to outgoing messages, quality of conversations. Also, noting timestamps to see how quickly matches occur. Day 1 results already looking exactly like I predicted. Amanda gets 12 matches within the first hour. Jake gets 2 matches after swiping for 3 hours. Michael gets 1 match, David gets 0. See? Even when a woman is literally homeless, men can't see past their sexual objectification. Those guys matching with Amanda don't care about her situation, they're just looking at her photos. Meanwhile, these perfectly decent employed men are being ignored despite having their lives together. Wait, that doesn't support my hypothesis the way I thought it would. Whatever, need more data before drawing conclusions. Day 2, Amanda, up to 34 matches, getting constant messages. Guys are actually being really nice to her, several offering to help with her situation. Jake now has 4 matches total, sent 15 messages and got 2 responses. Michael has 3 matches, but no one's messaging him back. David finally got 2 matches, but the conversations died after their first responses. This is weird, but still early in the experiment. Maybe the app's algorithm is just boosting Amanda's profile because it's new. By day 5, the pattern is becoming impossible to ignore. Amanda, 67 matches, at least. 50 meaningful conversations started by matches. Multiple guys offering to help her find housing, job opportunities, even just basic support. Some of the messages are incredibly thoughtful and kind. Jake, 8 matches total, sent 31 messages, got 6 responses, 0 conversations lasting more than 3 exchanges. Michael, 6 matches, even worse response rate to his messages. David, 4 matches, practically radio silence when he tries to start conversations, starting to feel genuinely confused about what this data is showing. Maybe I should adjust my hypothesis slightly. Clearly the issue is that men are fetishizing Amanda's vulnerability. They're not actually interested in her as a person, just excited by the power dynamic. That's got to be what's happening here. But when I read through the actual messages Amanda's receiving, they seem surprisingly genuine. Lots of guys sharing their own struggles, offering practical help, asking thoughtful questions about her interests and goals. Meanwhile, the few responses Jake and the others get are pretty surface level. Hey and what's up type stuff. Week 1 complete. Amanda has 89 matches and has been asked out by 23 different guys. Several have offered to pay for dates specifically because they understand her financial situation. Jake has 12 matches, been asked out exactly 0 times, had to initiate every conversation. Michael, 9 matches, also 0 date offers, struggling to keep any conversations going. David, 7 matches, same story as the others, starting to feel really uncomfortable about what this data might be suggesting. Maybe there's something wrong with the photos I chose for the guys. Go back and look at them critically. They're actually pretty decent. Jake especially photographs well, good smile, clear photos, looks like someone you'd want to grab coffee with. Meanwhile, Amanda's photos are obviously taken with an older phone, lower quality, and she looks tired and stressed, which makes sense given her situation, but somehow that's not deterring anyone from showing interest. Week 2 begins, and I'm starting to feel sick about continuing this experiment. Results are getting more extreme, not leveling off like I expected. Amanda now has 124 matches, multiple serious dating prospects, guys planning elaborate first dates specifically designed around her circumstances. 1 match offered to pick her up from wherever she's staying and take her somewhere nice. Another guy spent an hour crafting a message about his own experience with housing instability and how he'd love to support her. Actually had to stop reading some of these messages because they were making me emotional. Meanwhile, Jake sent 67 messages over 2 weeks and had 11 total responses. Of those responses, exactly 0 led to actual dates being planned. Most conversations just fizzled out after a few polite exchanges. Michael and David's numbers are even worse. They're basically shouting into the void. Final day of the experiment, and I'm just staring at my spreadsheet in complete shock. Amanda, 156 total matches, 73 substantive conversations, 31 date offers, 8 guys specifically interested in serious relationships despite her circumstances. Jake, 15 matches, 4 conversations lasting more than 5 messages, 0 date offers. Michael, 12 matches, 2 meaningful conversations, 0 date offers. David, 9 matches, 1 conversation lasting more than 3 messages, 0 date offers. These numbers are completely insane and totally contradict everything I thought I knew about dating dynamics. How is it possible that a woman with literally no money, no permanent address, No stability whatsoever is drowning in dating opportunities. While men with steady jobs, decent appearance, and normal lives can barely get anyone to respond to their messages. Spend the next 3 hours just staring at this data, trying to figure out where my analysis went wrong. Maybe the men matching with Amanda are just desperate creeps who think she'll be easy to take advantage of. But reading through the actual conversations, most of these guys seem genuinely caring and respectful. Several explicitly said they're not looking for hookups and want to take things slow given her situation. Multiple matches have professional jobs and seem like exactly the kind of stable partners any woman would want. Meanwhile, Jake, Michael, and David are being completely ignored by women who match with them, even when they send thoughtful, personalized messages referencing things in women's bios. The response rate is abysmal. Start Googling studies about dating app demographics to see if there's some explanation I'm missing. Find article after article confirming that men typically get far fewer matches and responses than women. Studies showing that even conventionally attractive men struggle on these platforms. Data indicating that women can afford to be extremely selective while men have to cast wide nets just to get basic attention. Everything I'm reading directly contradicts the narrative I've been pushing about women having it harder in dating. Feel like my brain is short-circuiting trying to process this information. How did I get this so wrong? Spend the entire weekend going through feminist dating theory trying to find explanations. Maybe this is just dating apps specifically and doesn't reflect real-world dynamics. But Marcus was specifically talking about dating apps when he made his original claim, which means he was actually right? Can't even bring myself to think that fully. Decide I need to talk through this data with someone objective. Call my friend Jessica, who's pretty level-headed about this stuff. Jess, hypothetically, if someone ran an experiment comparing dating app success between different types of profiles, what do you think they'd find? I mean, everyone knows men have it. Rough on dating apps. Even really great guys barely get matches. It's like a completely different experience from what women deal with. Feel my stomach dropping. But women face so much harassment and objectification on these platforms. Yeah, that's definitely true too. But in terms of just getting matches and responses, women have a huge advantage. I thought everyone knew that. Apparently everyone did know that except me. Hang up feeling even more confused and disturbed. How many other things have I been completely wrong about while lecturing people with such confidence? Think back to that conversation with Marcus and realize how dismissive and condescending I was. He was trying to share a genuine frustration, and I basically told him his lived experience was invalid, while being completely uninformed about the actual reality of what he was describing. The worst part is remembering how smug I felt during that conversation, so certain that I understood dating dynamics better than people who were actually experiencing them. Spend Monday morning at work feeling like I'm viewing everything through a completely different lens. Notice Marcus eating lunch alone and actually feel a pang of empathy instead of my usual irritation. Remember him mentioning how isolating dating apps can be when you're constantly being ignored. At the time, I thought he was just whining about not being handed female attention on a silver platter. Now I'm realizing he was describing a genuinely demoralizing experience that I completely failed to understand. Worst part is I could have just listened to him instead of immediately getting defensive. But I was so invested in my worldview where women always have it worse that I couldn't hear what he was actually saying. Tuesday afternoon, and I still can't stop thinking about this experiment. Keep returning to those conversations Amanda's profile received. How many of those matches seemed like genuinely good guys who were excited about the possibility of a relationship, even knowing she was homeless and had no resources to contribute financially? They wanted to take her out and treat her well specifically because they understood her situation. Meanwhile, Jake, Michael, and David couldn't even get responses to basic questions about hobbies and interests. What does that say about the actual power dynamics in modern dating? If women have the luxury of being incredibly selective while men struggle for any attention at all, then maybe the harassment women face is a symptom of that imbalance rather than proof of female disadvantage. Like, if guys are desperate for any response, some of them are going to act inappropriately out of frustration. Not excusing that behavior, but it suggests the underlying dynamic is more complicated than I thought. Wednesday evening, and I finally work up the courage to apologize to Marcus. Find him in the break room and ask if we can talk privately. Marcus, I owe you an apology for how I responded to your comments about dating apps last month. He looks genuinely surprised since I've never admitted being wrong about gender issues before. I did some research into online dating statistics and realized I was speaking from ignorance rather than actual data. You were describing a real phenomenon that affects a lot of men, and I dismissed your experience without even trying to understand it. Can see him processing this because it's such a departure from my usual approach to these conversations. Thanks for saying that, Charlotte. I wasn't trying to diminish what women deal with, just sharing my own perspective. I know, and I should have recognized that. I'm realizing I've been pretty closed-minded about certain topics. We end up talking for almost an hour about dating experiences from both sides. He shares stories about months of rejections and how demoralizing the whole process can be. I find myself actually listening instead of immediately thinking about how to counter his points. Turns out he's had some really thoughtful observations about gender dynamics that I never gave him a chance to express. Thursday morning, and I'm questioning everything I thought I knew about feminism and gender equality, not questioning whether women face real disadvantages, because obviously we do, but questioning whether my understanding of those disadvantages has been accurate or complete. Realize I've been approaching gender issues like a zero-sum game where acknowledging male struggles somehow diminishes female ones. But what if it's possible for both things to be true simultaneously? Women can face harassment and objectification while also having certain advantages in dating. Men can have institutional privileges while also struggling with loneliness and rejection. Maybe the real problem is how polarized these conversations have become. Friday afternoon, and I'm still processing the implications of this experiment. Keep thinking about how confident I was in my assumptions and how wrong I turned out to be. Makes me wonder what other topics I've been equally wrong about while being equally confident. Decide to actually research some of the claims I regularly make about gender disparities. Spend hours looking up statistics on workplace discrimination, educational achievement, mental health outcomes. Turns out the data is way more nuanced than the talking points I usually repeat. Some areas where women clearly face disadvantages, others where men do, many where it's complicated. Feel like I've been operating from a script rather than actually engaging with complex realities. Weekend arrives, and I'm having a complete crisis of confidence about my entire worldview. Not abandoning my feminist values, but realizing I've been expressing them in ways that were sometimes ignorant and counterproductive. Thinking about all the conversations where I've lectured people instead of listening. All the times I've assumed bad faith when people shared experiences that didn't fit my narrative. How many opportunities for actual understanding did I miss because I was more interested in being right than being accurate? Decide to delete all the fake dating profiles because this experiment has served its purpose. But first, I screenshot the final data one more time. Amanda, 178 matches, 89 conversations, 47 date offers from guys ranging from college students to professionals. Jake, 18 matches, 7 conversations lasting more than 5 messages, still 0 date offers. Michael, 15 matches, 3 meaningful conversations, also 0 dates planned. David, 11 matches, 2 conversations that went anywhere, same story. These numbers represent a complete demolition of everything I thought I understood about dating and gender dynamics. Feel simultaneously humbled and grateful for this wake-up call. Sunday evening reflection on this whole experience. Realize the most disturbing part wasn't being wrong about the data. It was how aggressively certain I was while being completely uninformed. I built my entire identity around understanding gender issues better than everyone around me. Used that supposed understanding to dismiss and lecture people who were sharing genuine experiences. Marcus wasn't mansplaining or minimizing female struggles when he talked about dating difficulties. He was describing a real aspect of his life that I could have learned from if I'd been willing to listen. Instead, I made him feel like his perspective was invalid and unwelcome. How many other people have I done that to over the years? Monday back at work, and I notice I'm approaching conversations completely differently. When topics related to gender come up, I find myself asking questions instead of making pronouncements. Actually curious about other people's experiences rather than assuming I already know what they should be thinking. It's uncomfortable because I'm used to feeling like the expert in these discussions, but it's also refreshing to admit there are things I don't understand. Tuesday lunch conversation with some female coworkers about dating app experiences. Instead of steering the conversation toward harassment and objectification like I usually would. I actually asked them about match rates and response patterns. Turns out their experiences align perfectly with my experimental data. Hundreds of matches, constant attention, ability to be extremely selective. They've never really thought about what the experience might be like from the male perspective. Share some of Marcus's insights and watch them have the same realization I did. Maybe we've all been operating with incomplete information about how these dynamics actually work. Wednesday evening call with my sister, who's always been more moderate than me on gender issues. I ran this experiment on dating apps and got some really surprising results. Tell her the whole story and she's quiet for a long time. Charlotte, I'm proud of you for being open to changing your mind about this. I've wanted to have these conversations with you for years, but you always seem so certain about everything. There were times when I felt like you wouldn't even consider the possibility that your analysis might be incomplete. That hits really hard because I respect my sister's judgment enormously. Realize I've been shutting down potential dialogue with people I care about because of my need to be right. Thursday morning coffee with Marcus to continue our conversation from last week. Tell him about the dating app experiment and show him some of the data. His reaction is really interesting, not smug or vindicated, just relieved to have his experience validated. I never wanted to be right about this stuff, Charlotte. It would be great if dating apps worked well for everyone, but it's been frustrating to feel like I couldn't even discuss these issues without being accused of misogyny. Realize that my previous approach to these topics actually made it harder to address real problems. By dismissing male perspectives, I was preventing conversations that could lead to better understanding for everyone. Friday afternoon reflection on how much my thinking has changed in just 2 weeks. Still completely committed to gender equality and women's rights. But now understand that supporting women doesn't require dismissing or minimizing legitimate male experiences. The dating app experiment taught me that reality is more complex than ideological talking points, and that intellectual humility is way more valuable than appearing to have all the answers. Most importantly, learned that listening to people's actual experiences is more informative than assuming I already know what they should be feeling. Weekend planning to reach out to a few other people I may have been dismissive toward in past conversations. Not to abandon my feminist principles, but to apologize for being closed-minded about topics I didn't fully understand. Turns out you can care about gender equality while still being wrong about specific aspects of how gender dynamics actually work. And admitting those mistakes makes you more effective, not less committed to the cause. Sunday evening deleting all the screenshots and data from the experiment, but keeping the lessons learned about intellectual humility and the importance of listening to perspectives that challenge your assumptions. Still processing how dramatically this changed my understanding of dating, gender dynamics, and my own relationship to being wrong, but grateful for the wake-up call, even though it was uncomfortable. Monday morning, back to normal life, but with a fundamentally different approach to conversations about gender. More questions, fewer assumptions, more curiosity about other people's experiences. Turns out there's a lot I didn't know, and admitting that feels way better than pretending to have expertise I never actually had.